Good morning or afternoon or evening or whenever you're watching this. In this video, I want to talk about the story Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. Before I get too far into the story, I want to issue sort of a trigger warning. This is a concept that I hadn't used previously with this story, but I've decided to start using. If you would like to read a different story this week, you'll notice that on our D2L page, I have sort of a library file where you can find a whole bunch of different stories to check out. And I say this because having reread Bloodchild recently and having read students' posts on this story over the years, I am noticing that there are certain people who have experiences in their life, traumatic experiences, who find this story pretty troubling. The story is about an alien species that is symbiotically cohabitating on a planet with refugees from Earth. And the two species, their relationship is not without significant manipulation and violence. And some of it is sexual violence. So if you would prefer to read something else, go check out something else in the library on the course, and you can send me an email to ask me my opinion on any particular story if you'd like a little clarification. Okay. So going forward now, I'm going to speak freely about the story Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. So this story blew my mind the first time I read it. I've read other work by Octavia Butler in the past, and of course she's was an excellent writer. But this story, the amount of depth in a short space is just so startling. The premise of the story is that some refugees from Earth, they were fleeing something like slavery or death, and they end up on another planet. This planet is inhabited by an intelligent insectoid species called Tlic, T''Lic. And the deal that eventually gets sort of worked out on this planet that the humans try to colonize is that they can live there, but they live on a preserve, which is a protected area of land. There are certain progressive Tlic that maintain this preserve so that the others of their species don't come in to the human population and breed them out of existence. Because the relationship between the humans and the Tlic is as such that the human body is a perfect host for the larva of the alien species. And of course, in this story, the humans are the alien species on the planet that's already populated. Octavia Butler had said that she wanted to write a model of colonialism that required some sort of exchange, not one where one group conquered another and destroyed it, or another group conquered another and subjugated it, but one where there had to be give and take from both sides. In this symbiotic relationship, the Tlic, they've relied on the humans to host their eggs and their larvae because they had destroyed the previous type of hosts, or the other type of host that they had naturally living on their planet evolved to no longer serve very well for the purpose of breeding more Tlic. So when I first read this story, the power dynamic seemed very heavily tilted in the direction of the Tlic, because they are the ones that are keeping the people on the preserve, and they are the ones that have the giant stinging tails that can impregnate human beings with eggs, and they are the ones that seem to be in charge. That dynamic has changed a little bit over time, the more times I've read the story and the more times I've read student responses to the story. I also read and listened to some interviews with Octavia Butler, and I've included one in the course. I think it's really fascinating to hear what she says about the story in this interview, so I really highly encourage you to listen to the interview. She says that people come to the story and they see slavery in it, and that they're reading that into the story. It's not something that she intended. And she sees it as a love story. When you think about the story as a love story, things kind of change, and you remember that you come to the story as a human. You relate to Gan, you relate to Kui, we relate to Hoa and his family, and you think of yourself in the position of the human being in this relationship, in this dynamic. you don't necessarily relate to the clique. And so you see them perhaps as a monster or something terrifying or, something inhuman. But when you read Tigatoy, the main clique character in the story, when you read the conversation between her and Gan, you start to maybe see that the relationship is a little bit more complicated than scary monster wants to get person lay eggs. It's not only a little more complicated, it is much, much more complicated and incredibly nuanced. This is what I think makes Bloodchild such a mind-blowing story. So I do hope that you read it. If you've made it through my discussion of the story here, I've been pretty frank about what you're going to read. It's absolutely a masterpiece of science fiction. So I look forward to reading what you think about the story and your responses to the questions that I've posed on D2L, and I will read them soon.